If you want to reach the point where you can actually make a livable income from your art, there's 4 things I think you really need to master. You need to master the technical skills. You need to master the conceptual knowledge, things like composition, light and shadow, reflections, etc. You also really need to push your creativity so you can come up with a unique voice. And you also just need as much painting experience as possible so that you just bring so much more to the table every time you sit down to paint or stand up to your easel and paint. And today I'm going to talk about something you can do to maximize those technical skills, and in particular drawing. I believe drawing is the backbone of everything that we do in the village of commercial sales. And so let's be clear about that. I'm talking to artists who actually want to make a living by selling their art to people that are going to take it home and hang it in their house. Now, despite what goes on in the world of postmodernism and most publicly funded galleries, people in the village of commercial sales, people who actually buy art to take it home and hang in their house, what they want to see, they want to see work that shows mastery of skills, it's masterfully executed, and it is hopefully done with a unique voice in a way that resonates with them. And the majority of the public that buys art, they appreciate things like craft, skill, exquisite beauty, things that are kind of poo-pooed over in the public gallery sort of thing. So this is our world. If you're not in that world, this doesn't apply to you. But if you want to make your living selling your art at art festivals, at art galleries, or online, then I believe this is the best way to do that. And today I'm going to give you some very specific exercises that you can use to master your drawing skill. Now, the first one I'm going to talk about is gesture drawings. And these are very quick drawings done maybe 30 seconds, a minute, no more. And the idea here is to try to capture the feeling or the gesture or suggest the gesture of the model. Now, I used to do a lot of these in my life drawing classes when I was in high school. But the great thing now is there's a ton of YouTube channels that actually have model poses on there. So I'm actually using one of these here today. So I'm gonna play this video on my laptop in front of me, and I'm just gonna be working from the poses that are on my laptop. Okay. And again, what we want to do here is we just want to suggest the model's pose. We don't want to get in and be drawing it very detailed. We want to suggest that gesture of the model's pose. And I'm just doing this using a Sharpie. You can use conte, you can use a pencil, you can use whatever you'd like. So your hips are kind of like this and their leg comes out here. And again, so you just want to get the basic gesture of the model's pose. You can see she's standing with one leg forward. Okay, here's the next one. Again, these are very, very quick. This is like speed dating, I guess, in terms of drawing. But the intent here is to get your mind in the idea of you're suggesting things very, very quickly. We're not really laboring over these because in drawing, one thing that's really, really important, I should say in painting, one thing that is really, really important is the ability to suggest something quickly. If we can say something in 3 or 4 brush strokes rather than 30 strokes of like the one hair brush, that's usually going to be a much more effective way of painting than if we get in there and try and labor over it. So again, these are not by any means supposed to be finished drawings. These are actually a really good way to warm up when you start drawing. But again, it's all about getting you to kind of see the basic shapes and gestures of the model and render that very, very quickly. And this falls into one of the modes that I talk about a lot, which is practice mode, right? There is no intent here for us to create a finished drawing or something that anyone is even going to see. It is all just about, again, speed, trying to suggest that stuff fairly quickly. Now I'm going to switch over now, maybe to a piece of conte, and I'll just show you a little different way of doing that using these. This is kind of good because you can use the side of the conte to suggest things. It's a little more forgiving than the Sharpie marker. But again, the whole point here is to just suggest that basic pose of the model. And again, you can see a number of these kind of channels on YouTube where you can get the model poses. And let's do one more with the conte, just so you get the basic idea. We'll do this one maybe a little bigger when we switch to the next pose. Okay, this is a cool pose here. And as I said, these are a great way to just warm up if you're doing a life drawing class, or even if you're just going to start drawing that day. Doing these gestures is just really going to help you. And again, it's going to help you see and make decisions very quickly, which when you come to painting is incredibly, incredibly important. As I say, the ability to suggest something as opposed to rendering it in great detail is always of great benefit. Okay, so that's it for gesture drawings. I've done, what have I done here? I'll actually take pictures of these so that you can see them. But again, the whole idea here is that these are things that are done very, very quickly. They are not a finished product. There's no intent for us to take these pieces and do anything with them. The only purpose is to get us loose, to get us moving very quickly, getting us try and see things quickly and translate it quickly to the page. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is something called a blind contour drawing. This is something that's very different. So let me get things set up for that and I'll show you blind contours. Okay, if gesture drawings were all about quickness and immediacy and just seeing the big shapes and trying to get them in quick, blind contour drawing is actually the opposite. What we want to do with blind contour drawing, we're actually going to draw without looking at the paper, and we're going to have our pen trace along the contours of what we're actually going to draw. So start off here, I have a picture of my son Cameron from when he was a very young boy. And I also did a watercolor painting of this way back. So we can maybe put that up on the screen so you can see kind of, again, how important drawing is to be able to paint portraits in watercolor. And that's the kind of thing I used to do. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to take the pen and I'm going to imagine it's at the top of his forehead. And I'm going to trace down the edge of his forehead out to his eyebrow. And there's a little bit of top of his eyelid, back to the rest of the eyelid, down to the eye. Now let's go back up into the nose and over to the eyebrow. Now again, I'm not looking at my page. I'm just trying to trace out the shape. Now I'm down at his mouth, and trying to just really train my eye to see, and I'm trying to get my eye and my mind and my hand to work together. Now, these are not supposed to look realistic or good, anything but. They often look like abstract stuff, maybe something that was a result of a bad acid trip, and that's okay. The whole point here is we're just getting our mind and our hand and our eye used to tracing the shapes that we see, the edges that we see without looking at the paper. And then when I look at the actual drawing, you can see, yes, this looks like it's something out of a total abstract from the 70s, and that's what it's supposed to look like. Now, I'm doing these fairly quickly. You can actually slow them down a little more if you want, but it doesn't even have to be of like a person. I'm actually going to do another blind contour of my toaster. So let me just get that set up, and we'll do a blind contour of the toaster. Okay, so the principle is exactly the same. And the reason I'm doing this, I want you to know that you don't have to have a live model. You don't have to have life drawing classes to be able to improve your drawing skill. So let me assume I'm starting out at the bottom of the toaster. I'm going to trace up to the top and then around the circumference. And then I'm going to come in with the chrome piece at the top. Then there's the two little slots. Now I actually am going to have to lift my pen here, but I'm not looking down. So I'm just going to move it down a little to do the next slot. Then I'm going to move it over. And now I'm assuming we're coming down the right-hand side. We've got the little toggle here. That comes down. So now we've got part of the dial that I can see. And then we've got the cord, which is going to go around this way and come back here. Now we've got the socket at the end of the cord. And I'm actually doing this fairly fast. You might want to do this slower. I actually am used to painting fast, so this is actually probably much faster than someone would likely do that. But again, you can see here that, again, it's like an abstracted version of the toaster. And again, the important thing about this one is really teaching your eye to see, and it's teaching your eye and your hand to kind of work in concert. Because ideally what we're going to do when we're drawing is we're often kind of looking at our subject, and then we're looking at our page, and then sometimes we're actually doing almost this blind contour thing for brief moments while we're looking at the subject, and then we look back and kind of landmark again. And so the next stage after this would be actual contour drawings where you actually look up at the subject and look down. Now, I'm not going to go through the whole thing of doing one for you. And I'm actually going to switch the camera around now because I want to speak to you guys, again, just more in general. So I'd like to be able for you guys to see me. Okay, so we've talked about, again, the two different ways of drawing that may be different than anything you've done before. And again, these are for very specific purposes to really break drawing down to very simple things and focus on one thing at a time. And when we do gesture drawings, we want to focus on very quick strokes that suggest the shape of the model's leg, arms, kind of torso, whatever. And these are usually 30 seconds to a minute, no more. And then we have the blind contour drawings. And that's where, again, we're just drawing something, but we are not looking at the page. We are just pretending that pen or pencil or whatever is kind of just tracing the contours of the shape. And doing these two things in isolation will really improve your drawing ability. And then we can move to the next stage, which we can actually do contour drawings, but where we're actually looking up at the subject and down at our paper, kind of back and forth, but we're still just doing a contour drawing. And so I actually did a page of that picture of Cameron, so you can kind of see what that looks like. And that's kind of the third type of thing I want to talk about. So here's the thing with drawing, and I'm sure a bunch of you have heard this before, like learning to master drawing is a lot like getting really, really good at push-ups. You know, you can read about push-ups, you can take classes about push-ups, you can watch videos about push-ups. The only way you get better at doing push-ups is actually doing push-ups. And the only way you actually get better at drawing is by drawing. You've got to just put the reps in. And so the really most important thing, I believe, if you want to master drawing is to start a practice of drawing every day. And so that entails getting a daily sketchbook, and that entails every day setting aside, even if it's only 15 minutes to a half an hour, but draw every day. And when you draw, then the whole thing comes down to, well, what are you going to draw, right? Well, you can actually draw anything. It Doesn't really matter what you draw. You can draw from photographs. You can draw, as I just did at the start there, from images on YouTube on a laptop or a computer. You can set up a still life. You can have a friend or family member pose for you. It really doesn't matter what you draw. What's important is that you draw every day for 15 minutes to a half an hour. This is so important. It's the same sort of thing with working out or trying to get in good shape. I mean, I've worked out on and off my entire life, but typically what it has been for me is I'll go all in and my workouts keep getting longer and longer and more complex. And next thing you know, I'm doing 6 days a week with a triple split routine. But then after 4 months, 5 months, I either get injured or it's just too much. I'm going to the gym an hour and a half a day, 3 days, or 5 to 6 days a week. And you're better off to have a routine that you can do just that's reasonable, attainable, measurable, but that's much less, but you're going to do it every day. And I actually discovered this last year with fitness. I had a friend of mine who I wasn't happy with the physical condition I was in. I put on probably 20 pounds of fat and kind of lost a lot of muscle. I was in my 60s and thinking, okay, well, I guess this is just it. And anyways, he had a talk with me and he promised me that he could put me on a routine where I would just work out twice a week for less than half an hour, walk an hour a day, and then just do a very simple diet where it was just that intermittent fasting where you didn't eat till you'd been up for 5 or 6 hours. And then it was actually a very reasonable amount of calories. He promised me if I did this every day for 6 months, I would notice dramatic results. And I have to tell you, that's the least amount of workouts I've ever put in anytime. But I thought, okay, I'll give it a try, right? Almost just like when Harley Brown said, if you're willing to do the work, you can be successful. I thought, well, what if he's right? So I did that. Now I'll put a picture up here. This was of me earlier this year in the gym at 62 years of age. And that was by far the best shape I've ever been in my life. And it's the least amount of intense work I'd ever done. But I just stuck with it for a year, just going in, working out twice a week, maintaining this moderate sort of diet, and then walking for an hour every day. Twice last year, I had separate people ask me if I was a retired professional athlete. And that's from a year before thinking, okay, I'm in my 60s, I'm fat, I'm out of shape. I guess that's just what 60 looks like. But it's the same sort of thing with drawing. And the reason I wanted to bring that up is if you're like me, you have a tendency to go all in on something. So it's much better to draw for 15 minutes to a half an hour a day for the next year, 2 years, 3 years, then get all excited and be drawing for 3 and 4 hours a day, because you're only going to be able to carry that on for a certain amount of time. It's just going to be too much, and then you're going to end up leaving it just because you don't have the time, or you just get kind of burned out. And here's the thing about it, and it's just like working out. The reason these small incremental steps are so important is if you're coming to draw every day, each day you're going to improve a little bit, improve. So your skill level is going to go way up. But if you go intense for a month, it's yes, your skill level will go up, but then you hit that burnout phase. And so you leave drawing for a month, and guess what happens? Your skill goes back down, and then you've got to have a month to take it up again. So much better to hit your drawing sessions every day. Keep it very reasonable. Like I say, 15 minutes to half an hour, no more. And I guarantee you in a year, you will be much better at drawing. And drawing is one of those dominoes, right? It's one of the things I talk about. If you knock it over, it's going to knock over all kinds of other things that are going to have a dramatic improvement in your work. And drawing, like I say, is the #1 skill that everything else is based on. Now, I'm going to get in at the end. I'm actually going to tell you how you can go about setting up a life drawing class if you want. If you have several artist friends, you can actually do it yourselves. You don't even need to hire a model. But before I talk about that, I'm going to talk about keeping yourself accountable, because again, you can have the greatest regimen in the world. If you don't stick to it, it won't work. And so the question becomes, how can we kind of force ourselves to be accountable? And so any sort of plan we have, it has to fit into a very specific thing. It needs to be specific, concrete, reasonable, attainable, and measurable. Right? That's SCRAM. I know that from my days as a sergeant in management classes when we were kind of monitoring the performance of the police officers under me. So specific, right? It's draw once a day, 15 minutes to half an hour. It's concrete. Yes, we know exactly what that means. Is that reasonable? I think it is. Is it attainable? It certainly is. But here's the thing. Is it measurable? And yes, it is, but here's what we know. Statistics just bear this out. If you don't measure your progress, you will not be nearly as successful. So how do we measure it? Well, there's a couple ways you could do that. What I recommend is, again, you start a sketchbook. You can get a fairly big size book, hardcover, that has all the paper, regular paper to draw on. And if you're gonna start today, go in and date every single page, one day at a time. So all the way through till the end of the book. That way, every time you open that book, you'll know, if it's the 12th of May, are you on the 12th of May as the next blank page, or are you still back on the 27th of April? In which case, you know, okay, I'm not hitting my targets. And then the other thing I recommend is kind of at a weekly basis, you go back and measure your progress. So again, I would mark in, say Sundays, and mark in the calendar, measure my drawing progress. And then you go back through that sketchbook, and you check to see, did I draw every day? And if you didn't, then you mark down, well, I got 3 out of 7, or 2 out of 7, or no out of 7, or 7 out of 7. And this is really important, because whenever we set up any sort of goal, again, we want to measure, we want to make sure it's reasonable and attainable. And again, 15 minutes a day, I think, is reasonable for everybody. You can draw on the bus, on the train, you can draw while you're watching TV with your spouse. You can, again, 15 minutes, we all have. But if it turns out you're not hitting your targets continually, you need to know that. But then you have to have a conversation with yourself, and it's going to be kind of one of two reasons. One is that you just don't want this that badly. And that's okay. That's actually a good thing to learn, because if maybe you just want art as a hobby, maybe you just want to get pretty good at art, you want to be able to have it as a relaxing, enjoyable pastime where you're okay at it, and that's fine. But if it's your goal to be a professional, you need to be willing to put in the work that's required to achieve all of the skills, knowledge, and experience that you're going to need. And so if you're not hitting your targets, you need to have a serious talk with yourself, and you need to kind of, again, just force yourself to go in and hit the targets. And again, if you're not, and if you can't make yourself draw 15 minutes a day, let's be realistic. There's no way you're going to make yourself paint 4 or 5 hours a day, 5 or 6 days a week, which is really what's required to become a professional. So it's better off you learn this over the course of a year with just the cost of a couple sketchbooks and a pen or a pencil than actually quitting your job and investing in all this stuff just to realize, oh, I guess I'm really not that passionate about it. I'd just like to have it as a hobby. So again, you need to measure it. If you do measure it, you are much more likely to hit your targets and then get about the objective that you're trying to do. In this case, it is to actually improve your drawing. Now, I'm gonna get to, actually, I'll give you an example of how you could set up your own life drawing class if you have another few friends as artists, or even if you just have someone who's willing to act as a model for you. But before I do that, I wanna mention that, so there's two things, again, that are really, really important in terms of the creating of art, in terms of skills and knowledge. The one is the technical skills, and following along with this is really going to improve your drawing skill. The next one is the kind of conceptual knowledge, and the number one thing about that is composition. And that's the way in which we organize the various shapes, values, edges, colors, etc. on our page. We want that to create a pleasing dance for the viewer's eye. And if you can do that, you are much more likely to engage them and get a sale. And I see a lot of artists who make very poor choices in the first minute or two of a painting that doom it to failure. And I also see a lot where the painting turns out pretty good. There's no major issues, but it's just with a little tweaking. They could take it from good to great, and that will often make the difference between someone saying that's nice and walking on, or someone going, oh my God, I love it, I have to have it. So I have a color and composition course. It's regularly several $100s. There's a link I'm going to provide in here. Down below in the description, you can get that course for over 80% off. You can also get 5 free chapters to my upcoming book, You Can Sell Your Art, and that's a step-by-step plan to creating a livable income from your art. So it's not the first 5 chapters, it's just 5 chapters that I think are going to be really beneficial, and I think there's over 40 chapters in the actual book. Okay, give me just 1 sec, and then we'll talk about setting up your life drawing class. So just drawing on your own can be very beneficial, but it is a lot more fun when art becomes kind of a group activity. And I was fortunate enough when I was in high school, I took a very good commercial art program, but we had life drawing classes twice a week. And that would be like about an hour and a half class. We'd have a model. We'd start with the gesture poses, and then we'd do the blind contours, and then we'd do contours, and then we'd do kind of a longer pose. But when we didn't have a model, we would just take turns getting up in front of the class. We had actually a bunch of tables put together in a chair. We just take turns acting as models, and you can do that as well. And you can do that even if you just have one friend that's serious about art, where maybe once a week, aside from your regular kind of 15 minutes to half-hour drawing, you get together and you draw for an hour or an hour and a half. And again, so you take turns drawing each other. If you've got 5 or 6 people, it's even better, because you might only have to be like a model kind of for 5 or 10 minutes every session, and the rest of the time you're drawing the other people. But if you're gonna do a life drawing class, there's a regular schedule that sort of fits really well. And so I would start with like a minimum of 10 gesture poses. And for the models, you don't have to be the super contortionist kind of model poses that professional models do. You can just turn, look a certain way, put your hand up to your head, put your hand in your pocket, you can squat down, whatever. It doesn't have to be super fancy. And again, you just want to be timing it, that it's like no more than a minute. So that would be like the first 10 minutes, and that also gets you very warmed up. The next thing, again, would be a blind contour. And I would do 1 or 2 sessions, no more than 5 minutes of a blind contour drawing. And then I would do like a 10-minute pose with an actual contour drawing where you're actually, you're kind of following the contour, but you're also looking down at the paper. And now remember, all of this stuff we're talking about in life drawing classes, this is practice mode, right? We're not trying to create a finished piece of art as a product that someone might buy or that we're going to frame. We're not really in process mode trying new things. We're just doing specific exercises to hone in on specific skills that make up that whole practice of drawing. And so again, there should be no ego here. It's not about how good the drawing is or how good it isn't. It's about doing those exercises. This is like hitting golf balls on the driving range. And also when you're trying things, if you've never done gesture drawings before, you're probably not going to be very good. It's going to be uncomfortable. Don't worry about it. This is not a place for ego to come into it. If you're doing the life drawing, after you've done those, then you could do a longer pose of say 20 minutes. And in that pose, then you might want to get into full kind of light and shadow, and you could even get like sketch and then kind of, you know, resolve things a little more. But I really liked the idea, and I know I really benefited from like gesture drawings. That really helps me now. Like I can suggest a pine bough in 5 strokes of the brush because of all that training with gesture drawings, rather than getting out the little 1-hair brush and trying to paint every pine needle on the pine boughs. And again, that blind contour drawing is really teaching your eye to see and your mind to translate what your eye sees. And then again, the third thing is the daily practice of drawing. And again, if you're doing that, I would start off with you could just start drawing, and it doesn't matter what you draw. You could draw with a pencil, draw with a marker, draw whatever. Every once in a while, it's probably a good idea to just throw a blind contour in there for a couple minutes, again, just teaching your eye to see. And then often in your daily sketchbook pages, they're not like a finished drawing. I'll show you the example of kind of when I was doing kind of more what would be a sketchbook page of that picture of Cameron. And I've got like, you know, 2 different kind of contour drawings of him, a close-up on the eye, a close-up of the ear. We're just exercising, right? It's like the difference, I guess, again, from a bodybuilder. It's just you're in the gym working out, you're not on the stage posing in front of a crowd. This is just doing the workouts so that when we go to actually create our work, we have those skills and we've knocked down that domino that's going to have you know, a dramatic impact on everything we do. That's it for drawing. In an upcoming episode, I'm going to talk to you about composition and about something you can do to make sure that every single painting you do going forward starts with a good composition and at least has the chance to be one of those ooh, ah, I love it paintings. And also, again, I'm committed to doing everything I can, sharing all my experience with those other artists who their dream is to actually make a livable income from their work. I'll be dropping out a new video every week. If you want to be notified, then obviously hit the subscribe button, click on the bell, and if you like this video, if you hit the like button, that would help me out a lot. And that's all for now. I'll see you all next time. Oh, don't forget, click on the link below if you want to get the free chapters to my book and also maybe learn about some of my courses at amazing discounts.